And the Han Empire is the remarkable first long-standing, highly prosperous, unified state of China, unifying northern China and southern China into a unified state that lasted for about 400 years. And for the Western world, it was the counterpart of the period of the rise of the Roman Empire, because the Roman Republic was gaining more and more power until the Roman Republic became the Roman Empire, typically dated to around 30 BCE, when that transition occurred to the first Roman Emperor, Augustus. And one can see that the Han Dynasty and the rise of the Roman Empire were simultaneous, and moreover, the beginning of long-distance east-west trade on a large scale occurred, because the Han Dynasty was very intent on long-distance trade and pushed into the north to assure safety of what became the Silk routes. The Silk routes that would carry China's prized silks across this vast distance to the aristocracy of Rome, who treasured these prized possessions from China. And of course, the two-way trade between the Roman Empire and the Han Empire helped to promote prosperity of both East and West, creating for the first time, really at large scale, a unified economy that stretched across Eurasia. The next phase of history for China was a disintegration of the Han Empire, falling into that category, the fourth category, when China doesn't have a unitary state, when there are several dynasties, one after another, one toppling the next, when there are multiple kingdoms competing with each other and battling with each other. And that occurred for several hundred years. It's notable that far to the west, in Europe, at the same time, the Roman Empire was coming under threat by invading Germanic tribes, by the incursions of that Turkic steppeland conquering population, the Huns, when Attila invaded the Roman Empire in the middle of the 5th century, around 450 AD. So both China and Western Europe were falling under tremendous pressure. China earlier, because the Han Empire disintegrated, collapsed, turned into this long period, centuries-long period of warring states in the 3rd century AD, whereas the Roman Empire in the West lasted until the final collapse of Rome, the final conquering of Rome by Germanic tribes in 476 AD. But simultaneously in East and West, the unified empires, the Han Empire and the Roman Empire, came to collapse. In China, a new unified China was reconstituted at the end of the 6th century AD and into the 7th century. First with the Sui dynasty, followed by the great Tang dynasty. China reunified. What is astounding in European history is after the fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476, Europe never reunified until the late 20th century with today's European Union. From the fall of the Roman Empire, essentially until today, Europe was divided among competing kingdoms, competing states, principalities, cities, empires, but was never a unified structure. Geographers argue that a big difference of Europe and China was the physical geography, that China had a more natural protection along most of its borders. It had the ocean protection to the east. It had the rainforest protection in the south. It had the Himalayas, the Great Barrier, in the west. And it only faced the pressures constantly from the north. Whereas Europe, as the peninsula to the far west of Eurasia, is a very complicated structure with lots of peninsulas, with lots of seas, each one of which can be the base for a competing empire. With the Mediterranean itself divided into the Adriatic Sea and the Aegean Sea and the Tyrrhenian Sea, and with the North Atlantic coastlines, there were so many places. I could add the British Isles as places where there could be competing polities that had relative protection locally, but could never command enough dominance or power to unify all of Europe. So I think it's right to say that from 500 AD onward, Europe was divided among competing nation states, whereas China had long periods of relative unity internally, peace internally, and external threats without question, but still the possibility of maintaining a unified political structure. Well, the Sui dynasty at the end of the 6th century AD gave rise to the Tang dynasty, which lasted until the beginning of the 10th century or the early 900s. There was another relatively brief period in which the fall of the Tang dynasty led again to a lot of competition and fighting, struggle among competing kingdoms. But then China was reunified once again under the Song dynasty. And from the Song dynasty onward, though there were many, many twists and turns and periods of conquest and periods of unrest and periods of threat, one can say that there is a recognizable 1,000 years of a unified China as well. In fact, the Song dynasty faced major threats from the north, and despite a Great Wall, China was invaded from the north and was partly conquered from the north. So Song divided between a northern Song and a southern Song dynasty. The northern Song ruled by external forces, the southern Song ruled by Chinese Han population, but not unifying all of China. And the Song dynasty, however, the roughly 300 years of the Song dynasty gave rise to one of the most glorious periods of economic prosperity, population increase, and technological advance. Because it's during the Song dynasty that great advances of learning came, that the printing press with the removable type was invented in China, in which China's paper-making industry combined with this new movable type printing meant a vast proliferation of books and knowledge, and in which many of the institutions of the modern world, paper currency among them, modern finance, a kind of proto-capitalist economy, as historians describe the Song era, emerged, a period of remarkable prosperity. Now, the Song dynasty was soon followed by around 1 century of external conquest. Here again, the Great Wall plays a story, because the Great Wall had been built already in the 5th, 6th centuries BCE during the Warring States period, and then extended by the emperor of the Qin dynasty, then by the Han dynasty, to try to protect the North China Plain from the steppeland regions, to protect northern China from the Mongolian and the Turkic and later the Manchu conquerors. But this defense failed after the Mongols invaded China starting in the 1250s onward under Chinggis Khan's descendants, and by 1270 China had already fallen under Mongol control, and a Mongol emperor famed to us, Kublai Khan, not only conquered China, but established his capital in Beijing, just a few kilometers from where we are. The wall did not serve the purpose of protecting China from the Mongolian incursion. The Mongols did not build more of the wall. The wall was aimed at keeping them out, but they were in. Now, the Mongol rule in China, the Yuan dynasty of Kublai Khan with the capital in Beijing, lasted for about 1 century, because it was in 1368 that the Chinese drove the Mongols out. And it was that victory over the Mongols that gave rise to yet another great unified kingdom of China, the Ming dynasty.